Smoke hung heavy in the air, obscuring the faces gathered around the table. Cigars glowed like malevolent eyes, casting flickering shadows on the worn mahogany. The room reeked of whiskey and desperation, the silence punctuated by the clinking of glasses. This was the heart of the city's underworld, where fortunes were made and broken on a whim. At the head of the table, a hulking figure loomed, his face a mask of stone. Don Marco, they called him, a man who had clawed his way to the top through sheer brutality, but even empires crumble. In the shadows sat a young man named Nico, his gaze sharp, alert. Behind those calm, watchful eyes, a mind like a steel trap whirred, analyzing, strategizing. Nico had always been different. From a young age, he saw the world through a lens that others couldn't comprehend. His thoughts were deep, his questions profound, and his curiosity insatiable. While other boys his age dreamt of baseball and superheroes, Nico was drawn to the worn chessboard in his grandfather's shop. The intricate patterns of the game fascinated him, and he spent hours contemplating each move. The old man, a retired professor with a wealth of knowledge, recognized a kindred spirit in the quiet boy. He saw potential in Nico that others overlooked, a spark of brilliance waiting to be ignited. He taught Nico the art of strategy, of thinking 10 moves ahead. Every game was a lesson, every piece a tool in the grand scheme of things. The chessboard became a battlefield where Nico's mind could roam free. "The mind is a weapon, Nico," his grandfather would say, "and like any weapon, it must be honed." These words resonated deeply with Nico, shaping his approach to life and learning. Those lessons became Nico's creed. He immersed himself in the world of books, seeking knowledge wherever he could find it. His room was filled with stacks of books, each one a gateway to a new realm of understanding. He devoured books on history, philosophy, and warfare, absorbing knowledge like a sponge. The stories of great leaders and thinkers captivated him, and he sought to learn from their experiences. He learned from the mistakes of empires past, from the triumphs of cunning tacticians. Each page turned was a lesson in strategy, a glimpse into the minds of those who had shaped the world. He understood that true power lay not in brute force, but in the ability to anticipate and manipulate. The chessboard was a microcosm of the world, and Nico was determined to master it. He knew there was a better way to navigate this treacherous world. With his grandfather's wisdom and his own relentless pursuit of knowledge, Nico was ready to face any challenge that came his way. The world was a complex puzzle, and he was prepared to solve it one move at a time. Don Marco's iron grip on the city was starting to slip. The once unchallenged ruler of the underworld was now facing the inevitable decay of his reign. His methods were outdated and brutal, relics of a bygone era that no longer inspired the same fear and loyalty. Whispers of discontent echoed through the ranks, growing louder with each passing day. The men who once followed him without question were now questioning his every move. Nico saw an opportunity not to seize power through force, but to have it handed to him. He understood that brute strength was not the only path to control. He knew that respect, not fear, was the true currency of influence. Nico began to cultivate relationships, earning trust and admiration. He started small, offering advice, mediating disputes, finding solutions that benefited all parties. His approach was methodical and patient. He built a reputation for fairness, for being a man of his word. His integrity became his most valuable asset. His actions did not go unnoticed. The whispers about Nico's rising influence began to spread beyond the inner circles. Word of the young strategist reached Don Marco, who recognized talent. The old Don saw in Nico a potential successor, someone who could bring new life to the organization. Nico saw a chance to learn the inner workings of the organization. He immersed himself in the complexities of the business, absorbing knowledge like a sponge. He was playing the long game, a game of chess where the king was the ultimate prize. Every move was calculated, every decision weighed for its long-term impact. Nico knew that patience and strategy would eventually lead him to the throne. The city was his chessboard, and he was determined to checkmate the king. The path to power is rarely smooth, and Nico's journey was no exception. Every step he took was fraught with challenges and obstacles that tested his resolve. Betrayal and loss were harsh teachers, etching their lessons onto his soul. Each betrayal left a mark, a reminder of the trust he had misplaced. He learned that trust was a double-edged sword to be wielded with caution. The alliances he formed were fragile, built on a foundation of mutual suspicion. He witnessed firsthand the devastating consequences of impulsive actions. Rash decisions led to chaos, and he saw the cost of not thinking things through. There was a night etched vividly in his memory when a deal went sour. The tension in the air was palpable, and he could feel the impending doom. The ensuing violence left him with a scar from his temple to his jaw. It was a constant reminder of the price he had paid for his ambitions. But even in the face of such brutality, Nico refused to abandon his principles. He stood firm, knowing that his integrity was his greatest strength. He knew that succumbing to anger would only perpetuate the cycle of violence. Instead, he chose to channel his emotions into something constructive. He emerged from the crucible of that experience stronger, more resolute. The trials he faced had tempered him, forging a will of iron. He had tasted the bitterness of defeat, but it had only fueled his hunger for a better way. Nico knew that his scars were not just marks of pain, but symbols of his journey and growth. They were the scars of wisdom, guiding him towards a future he was determined to shape. As Don Marco's health deteriorated, a power struggle erupted within the organization. Ambitious lieutenants jockeyed for position, but Nico, true to his nature, operated from the shadows. He cultivated alliances, exploited rivalries, always staying one step ahead. He understood that information was as valuable as any weapon. He built a network of informants, their whispers feeding him the intelligence he needed. His methods were subtle, almost invisible to those who mistook his quiet demeanor for weakness. He played his rivals against each other, their own greed becoming their downfall. The old ways of the mob were slowly being dismantled from within. Nico was winning a game of whispers and shadows, of strategy and intellect. Among Don Marco's lieutenants, Salvatore the Bear Moretti was the most formidable. He ruled his territory with an iron fist, scoffing at Nico's methods. To him, power was seized, not earned through cunning. "You think you can outsmart a man with a gun to his head?" he sneered. Nico knew that a direct confrontation with Moretti would be disastrous, so Nico chose a different battlefield, one where strength lay in wit. He began by exploiting Moretti's weaknesses, his volatile temper, his overconfidence. He planted seeds of doubt in the minds of Moretti's allies. He orchestrated situations that exposed Moretti's flaws. Slowly, subtly, he chipped away at Moretti's authority. Moretti, blinded by his rage and paranoia, fell right into Nico's trap. Convinced that his rivals were plotting against him, he lashed out, making rash decisions. He alienated his allies, who began to gravitate towards Nico's calm leadership. Nico continued to consolidate his power, offering protection to those who pledged their loyalty. He understood that true power lay in creating a system where everyone benefited. He built a network of influence that extended far beyond the traditional reach of the mob. He forged alliances with politicians, businessmen, even law enforcement officials. Moretti, isolated and alone, became a liability. His downfall was swift and brutal, a testament to Nico's strategic approach. The bear was brought down not by a bullet, but by the whisper of a serpent. With Moretti out of the picture, Nico's ascent to leadership was assured. But he knew that true power had to be earned. He had watched Don Marco rule through fear, and he had seen the cracks that approach created. Nico chose a different path. He understood that respect, not fear, was the more enduring currency of influence. He treated his men fairly, rewarding loyalty and initiative. He listened to their concerns, addressed their grievances. He invested in the community, providing jobs, supporting local businesses. He knew that true strength lay in empowering others. He wanted to build an organization that was not only feared, but respected. There were those who clung to the old ways, seeing Nico's methods as weak. One such man was Tony "the Blade" Scarpelli, a lieutenant who believed in bloodshed. When Scarpelli openly challenged Nico's authority, many expected a swift and brutal response. They underestimated Nico's patience and calculated precision. He knew that meeting violence with violence would only validate Scarpelli's beliefs. Instead, Nico waited, allowing Scarpelli's arrogance to become his undoing. He allowed Scarpelli to overextend himself, to make mistakes. When the time was right, Nico exposed Scarpelli's treachery. Scarpelli's downfall was swift and absolute. It sent a clear message. Nico would not be ruled by violence, but he would not hesitate to use it when necessary. Nico's reign marked a new era for the organization. Gone were the days of reckless violence and petty turf wars. Under his leadership, they became a force to be reckoned with. He diversified their operations, investing in legitimate businesses. He never forgot the lessons he had learned on his journey to the top. He remained a student of history, of strategy, of human nature. He surrounded himself with advisors who challenged his thinking. He understood that complacency was the enemy of progress. He ruled for many years, his grip on the city absolute, yet his presence was more felt than seen. He was remembered not as a ruthless tyrant, but as a visionary leader, proving that true power lay in the quiet strength of the mind.